though he still has Tua at number 5. Remember, he moved him off and dropped him to number 6 a few weeks ago. Why? Because speaking to NFL aficionados, the impression was that there wasn't that big of a distance between Tua and Justin Herbert. If you listen to David Pollack, who was on Get Up earlier, he says, excuse me, there is a difference. There's obviously Joe Burrows, there's Tua, and then obviously there's everybody else with Herbert and Jordan Love being distant. He actually put Love ahead of Herbert. But if you're listening to Mel Kiper Jr., and then you're listening to other NFL aficionados who were saying there's not that big of a difference between Herbert and Tua, now you have to take into the equation the injury history, the ankles, now the hip. That hip is a very serious injury. You know, the ankle and all of that stuff, these are the kind of things that happen in football. Injuries do happen in football. Even that ankle injury happens in football. But the hip and the way he was damaged off of that hit against Mississippi State, I don't think that's something you can ignore. Plus, they had some stat up earlier, and since yesterday they were throwing out the fact that, you know what, I think that Tua has thrown the ball away about 12 times in 2 years. He has a penchant for holding on the ball. When I interviewed Nick Saban last week, that's what Nick Saban brought up. He has so much confidence in himself. He wants to hold on to the ball because he constantly believes he can make a play. Then I got to take into the equation, Max and Dan, who he's playing with. Who do you have if you're the Miami Dolphins at this particular juncture? If you're going on a roster that's relatively loaded with an abundance of weapons to throw the football to, et cetera, that's an entirely different ballgame. But Miami is clearly in rebuilding mode. We knew that based on what we saw last year, 2-3 games in. We said that this might be the worst football team we've ever seen, which is why we've raved about Brian Flores and the job that he did last year. But if you look at them right now, you're throwing Tua into a situation where you're essentially begging him to do more than you'd want a rookie to do coming off the kind of injuries that he ultimately had. I think it's a dangerous situation. I'm not saying I wouldn't take him. I would, but I'd be scared. And I don't, the operative word that is need, I'm not going to emphasize that they need to take him under those conditions. I think that's a bit too strong, but I'd still take him. I can't deny that.
Yes. They need to take Tua. 5 reasons I'm going to give you guys. First of all, remember about 13 years ago, this is the same organization that passed on Drew Brees because of injury. They've been trying to find Drew Brees since they made that decision. The second one, last year they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's a really good player, and Laramie Tunsil, who's a really good player, for draft picks. They did not trade really good players to acquire draft picks just for the chance to draft really good players. They acquired those picks for ammo to go get and make sure that they can go get the player that they wanted. The second thing, imagine they pass on Tua, right? And they go, you know what, we're going to play with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzy will play well. He's going to have his really good moments. And they win 7 or 8 games. And then you go into year 3 in 2021 of a rebuild for Brian Flores and Chris Greer, the general manager and head coach. They're going into year 3 of a rebuild, and they're going to have the 8th or 9th pick, and they still don't have a quarterback. The fourth thing, Nick Saban, one of the greatest coaches of all time, Stephen A., you just mentioned him. He said at halftime of the national championship 3 years ago, hey, Tua, I need you to go win this football game. That same coach told everybody, hey, if you pass on Tua, you're going to regret doing so. It's like I regret passing on Drew Brees. And then he also called him the most important person that ever came to the University of Alabama. My 5th point is the most important one, and you guys know this. You cannot become great at something unless you are willing to take risks. The Saints went onside kick at halftime against Peyton Manning. The Eagles, as the number 1 seed, went into the playoffs with a backup quarterback and ran a trick play on 4th and goal against the Patriots. The Chiefs went up to go get Patrick Mahomes when they were a playoff team with Alex Smith, and the Ravens drafted a quarterback who can't play in the NFL, according to some people, and Lamar Jackson. To go be great, to go win championships, you got to go take a risk. The Dolphins have to ask themselves, are they willing to pass on a chance of greatness? And they shouldn't. They need to draft Tua.
Well, listen, I'm not going to sit up there and knock those points down because I can't. What I'm going to say to you is that football, being a violent sport that it is, if you've got a guy that's relatively injury prone and that's what you're walking into the league with, and you're asking to throw him into the lion's den when he's bereft of the necessary weapons in order to be successful, that's a dangerous precedent to set. You're talking about a guy in Tua whose confidence you've got to monitor his confidence to such a degree. You're sort of like restricting him in terms of get rid of the football, stop holding on to it. We want you to have that confidence, but you can't feel like you can make every play. If you're playing with, I don't want to say inferior talent because it's not like the Miami doesn't have any players, but if you feel the need to press to make plays, that could damage you.
But here's the two things. The Dolphins are actually a good fit because they're in rebuild. They don't have to force Tua on the field. That's the whole point for the Dolphins, is that they have a general manager and head coach on long-term contracts that are tied together. They don't have to force Tua on the field. If they start 0-2 or 0-3, they don't have to panic and put him on the field. And the second thing is this. That's all Tua needs, is to realize he's not Russell Wilson in trying to make stuff happen. He is Drew Brees, and realizing, get the ball out of my hands, be surgical, be a ball distributing point guard, and he will excel at that. That's the whole point, is the Dolphins don't have to rush him on the field.
That's exactly right. Look, the reason you trade Tunsil and Fitzpatrick is because you want to reset the clock and get a quarterback on his rookie deal. Not have guys who are really good, who are coming up for big contracts, and then you have problems. Reset the clock, stockpile draft picks, have the right coach in place, get a quarterback on his rookie deal, win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, right? So that's why you move those pieces in the first place. The Drew Brees point is perfect also. You're passed on Drew Brees because of injury concern. And then you have a chance to draft a left-handed Drew Brees, which is what people are calling Tua. And you want to pass on that too? And then finally, look at the Dolphins. They won 5 games last year. The reason they won 5 is because in a must-win game for New England, the Dolphins beat them. And then they had a big offseason in terms of free agents, and now they have the draft upcoming. Now is the time. Fortune favors the bold. Tua's going to fall into your lap. You don't pass that up.
All right, Tua's had 5 separate injuries in college, including surgeries on both ankles and the hip. Miami has 3 first-round picks tonight. Looking forward to seeing what they do. Dan, thank you so much for being with us. First Take fam, we need your help. We want you to weigh in on the debate. It's really easy. Just send us the topic you want to see the guys go head-to-head on. Tag First Take on Twitter. Make sure to stick around later in the show to see if your idea made the cut. Coming up, more draft coverage. Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. Which quarterback will fall where tonight? Our draft guru, Mel Kiper Jr., with his latest mock draft after this break. Plus, comedian